third guest speaker tonight is Sarah Prendergast. And Sarah is a Senior Finance Manager with Orica, and she is also a Director of the AusIMM, which is the Australian Institute of Mining and Metallurgy, where she is also the chair of 2 committees and a member of a third. And tonight we're in for a treat because she's going to share her story, how to turn dyslexia into your superpower. Let's welcome Sarah.
Thank you, Katie Jane, and thanks to Mary and Tracy too for your fantastic stories. So my name's Sarah, and I work as a Senior Finance Manager with Orica. I look after their performance reporting, which is a finance function for their biggest region of Australia, the Pacific and Asia. It's got turnover of roughly under $2 billion. I'm also a single mum of 2 boys, Knox, 10, and Angus, 7. And tonight I'm going to tell you about how I turned dyslexia into my superpower. So what is it like to grow up with dyslexia? Sorry, I forgot to do the slides too. One of the things that resonated me with this slide was that they've obviously spelt dyslexia incorrectly, and dyslexia is really hard for a dyslexic to spell, ironically. So that's why I chose that one. But the slides will have quotes from very successful dyslexics as we go through. So what is it like to grow up with dyslexia? In school, I really struggled. I was constantly trying to hide my inability to demonstrate my knowledge. On top of this, I came from a home of domestic abuse inflicted from my father, alcohol abuse, external violence threats to my family, and my father was later diagnosed terminally ill with leukemia. And on top of this, I was extremely overweight. My school reports and friends will tell you how happy and smiley I was, but I was flat out trying to hide it all. In reality, I felt very heavy from all my secrets. And very, or more accurately, extremely lonely. I was very close to being kept down in grade prep due to my disinterest with reading. Primary school was really tough. It was full of anxiety and figuring out how to be invisible, especially when it was time for a spelling bee or rote-learned times tables or reading out aloud. My confidence scholastically was terrible. I was pretty convinced I was stupid. That's the issue when you're a high-functioning dyslexic. You're so aware that you don't make the cut in the way the education system measures the cut. At secondary school, I was great at maths and science and terrible at English, to the point I was put in a remedial class. Once there, I didn't fit in either. I usually ended up helping and assisting other kids in the remedial class. It was evident that whatever was a hurdle for me in demonstrating my spelling, reading, and writing skills was very different to theirs. It created everyday intensity and frustration and misery. I had, and I still have, difficulty concentrating when I read, with spelling, structuring any body of writing, and transcribing verbal messages. My mind is never quiet. I have an inability to concentrate on one thing at a time unless it's a very complex issue. My mind is always full of many thoughts and many things at a time. Oh, sorry, I just said that. Dyslexia. And many different topics at the same time. The fact is, I do not think in a linear fashion as most people do. At 13, I then became the carer of my then terminally ill father. At 15, I moved out of home midweek and returned home on the weekends to ensure that there was a week's worth of cooking and cleaning done for my dad. Creating this space to concentrate on schoolwork was extremely important, but it required me to make tough decisions around my sense of duty and loyalty to my father. I made further changes to my life in year 12. Dad's health had somewhat stabilised, and I decided I would move to Melbourne to live with my sister, so I would have support both at home with housework and someone to read and check my work. So all my life I'd suspected something was wrong with me, and then when I was 21, a psychologist finally confirmed it. I was then diagnosed with dyslexia. I was told I had a spelling ability of an 11-year-old, and my sentence structure and grammatical skills were that of a 15-year-old. So what is dyslexia? When you used to research dyslexia, what would come up was a whole heap of negatives. When I was first diagnosed as dyslexic, what I heard was being dyslexic was a disability. I was suddenly disabled. A learning disability that would mean that I would forever be a slow reader, have trouble spelling, and mix up words. It was easy to misunderstand that I was permanently going to be an incapable dumbass that wouldn't be successful at anything. But a real understanding and articulation of dyslexia is not just a collective of negative symptoms. It is a physical difference with the brain. We fundamentally think differently. It was this understanding that started to turn dyslexia into my competitive edge. Now, a couple of great things happened from being told I was disabled. During the testing of one of the most positive things that happened for me was the confirmation of my IQ. Now, in true dyslexic fashion, I can't remember the number. But I can remember that it's apparently higher than Einstein's. Now, I say apparently because until I have a moment of brilliance like the theory of relativity, I remain a bit sceptical. Some days I wake up thinking maybe today will be the day I have my moment of brilliance. But so far, I go back to sleep at the end of the day a little bit disappointed. But what this did do for me was provide confidence. I wasn't stupid. It also gave me a bit of spunk in my internal narrative. Like when people point out a spelling or grammatical mistake, not the people that do it from a place of generosity or being helpful, you know, the ones that get great pleasure out of your mistake, the ones that get a temporary fix of superiority for your mistake. Now I recognise that this need for superiority over others is far worse than any disability that I've got going on. I also became open to the fact that I learned differently. I learnt how I learn, and I stopped trying to fit in to a learning structure that didn't work for me. I've always adopted an extreme form of self-discipline, an understanding about sacrifice to get an outcome, and I've always had determination, largely coming from a shitty childhood that I refused to be a victim of. But being told I couldn't do something, that I was disabled, upped the ante. So 18 months after being diagnosed and upon completing my master's, I was awarded valedictorian of the Business and Law faculty at my university, which meant everyone could get a little bit fucked with a disability label. So this is a list of strengths of dyslexia. The ones in red or with ticks are the ones that I identify with most. Some of the strengths are an innate part of a dyslexic's brain, and some are developed through trying to overcome our deficits while navigating an education system. In a world that is starting to value cognitive diversity, understand what leadership of diverse talent looks like, and being 1 in 10 that has these superpowers gives me an edge. I won't lie, I too initially conceded that I had a disability. It was something I had to overcome. But we no longer live in a world that only values rote-learned spelling and times tables. That's not going to take your organisation or your life to the next level. And sorry, grammar police, but knowing the difference between there, and there, or which is which, is not going to change the world. But the attributes of dyslexia has brought humanity the most extraordinary developments, scientific discoveries, entrepreneurialism, leadership, and art, which have profoundly changed the lives before us and forever after us. But listening to these strengths and really acknowledging them are really different to embracing them and owning them. It was many years later I started to embrace the idea that dyslexia might be responsible for my positive attributes that see me perform in work and in life. To be honest, that journey is not complete for me. I still get pains of panic about not being good enough. But it did start to turn around after working on myself with Katie Jane's support. It was with this guidance and support I started to accept I might just be good enough. This was the turning point. Once I thought I could possibly be good enough, the universe got on board. A constant flow of external recognition started to come my way to support that notion. I was given a 30% increase on my earnings, which 3 years later has continued to grow. I became a director of the AusIMM. As Katie Jane mentioned, I now chair the Audit and Risk Committee and also the Council for Diversity and Inclusion. In 2017, I was granted $20,000 to research how to attract women into operational roles. And that year I was also awarded the Minerals Council of Australia's Australian Exceptional Woman in Mining. And in 2018, I was named Top 100 Globally Inspirational Women in Mining.
Wow.
But letting go of the negative attributes of dyslexia, which is different from forgetting them, because I do need to manage them, but I do not need to overcome them, is what transformed my disability into a superpower. In short, I forgot the slide again. In short, the remarkable attributes of dyslexia come with some challenges, but so do all of our strengths. Trying to overcome your weaknesses is exhausting and leaves nothing left, no energy to devote to your strengths. By letting go of your weaknesses, embracing your strengths, optimizing them, exploiting them, they become your superpowers. Thank you.
Congratulations. Yeah, phenomenal. Let's give her another round of applause. So, we all have our own form of dyslexia, don't we? Yeah, we've all got this thing that we think is our Achilles heel, but too often it's actually our superpower, which you realised, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah, phenomenal. And it has been, we actually worked together nearly 4 years ago now.
Yep.
And it's been absolutely extraordinary to see your journey since then. I want to congratulate you on all your success.
Thank you so much.
Let's give a round of applause.